Yeah, welcome everyone. It's good to see you all. Mm, It's great to see where everybody's from, so do please put into the chat where you're from. Just had to mute that. And yes, let me introduce Jeremy to everyone. So wherever I would go to do CE5, people would talk about Jeremy. And they would say, "You'll love him. He is quite something. The two of you will get along amazingly." But there was nothing more, just a sense, a feeling, an energy of knowingness. And so just this year in February, I did travel to New Zealand at a time when the question of to travel or not to travel was already in the air. And I traveled. I arrived in New Zealand, was picked up by two wonderful people who are here today. None of us knew each other, and we drove up into the mountains. And there was a whole group of people I had never met before, which is always very exciting. It's just with CU5, and there's a sense of family around it. And so here I am in a group of people I've never met before, and Jeremy moves through crowds and through air like a fish moves through water. And the fish feels and senses where to swim to. But even more, Jeremy will be in a deep conversation and at the same time know what is going on in every person in the room. And this ability to sense and be aware and be conscious of what's going on and to penetrate the layers and the various fields of reality it's a very rare gift and enables him to make very close and intense contact with other beings. um, yeah, Jeremy is able to grasp complicated mathematical, philosophical, and energetic concepts. He is a musician, a sound technician, he builds instruments. He is highly experienced with out of body experiences, and he teaches all of that. And yes, I could talk at length, but essentially, Jeremy cannot be described in words. He is an experience, and he lives an experience. And one of the things Jeremy has,
Hello.
somebody's mic is muted. Yeah, Marcus, could you make sure everybody's mic is muted? Thank you. Yeah, somebody's dog's barking there in the background. Yeah. Jeremy has a lot of experience with close proximity contact, on the ground contact. And we've had some of that together. Yeah, so Jeremy, would you like to describe some of those encounters and then speak about how on earth does one prepare oneself for that?
Yeah, thank you for that flattery, Una. Yeah, how to respond to that. Hi, everybody. I'm speaking to you from a winter morning on Sunday in Piha, New Zealand, Aotearoa. And thank you, everybody, for being here. It's so lovely to see so many friends and smiling faces. And thank you to Una for putting this together. And yeah, it's such a wonderful thing to be doing this and sharing this with you all. I have a few little acknowledgements to start with. This little Merkaba from a dear friend of mine who's here, and this crystal from some dear friends that are here as well. So yeah, how to start with such a complex issue and with essentially something that is an emerging science and an emerging science of consciousness, other than sharing our experiences. I guess one of the one of the experiences that came up in thinking of what to share today, you know, and a lot of us here have worked together in the field and have gathered a lot of documentation, whether it be pictures or audio recordings or videos or, you know, shared experiences in the field together. A lot of us have, you know, this bed of information that we're drawing from now. So sifting through all of that over this last week and indeed last night, there was one experience that kind of stood out because I think it was something that was very important in the long-term perspective of what was coming up. So this happened in, it was prior to the Mount Potts expedition, which some of you here were at. I was in bed and I was lying at it, I was asleep. And you know, occasionally you can hear your heartbeat in the pillow. So I was lying on my side and I could hear my heartbeat. So I was transitioning through the hypnopompic, the early stages of becoming aware that I was waking up, gradually phasing out, and very, very slow. So if people are familiar with the, you know, awake consciousness here and asleep consciousness here, and that spectrum of in between, I call it the gap. So here is we're asleep, here is we're awake, obviously, and then there's that transition. So hypnagogic going into sleep, hypnopompic coming out. So I was transitioning up and I could hear my heartbeat in the pillow. And then interesting, like I could hear an external sound and it was making the sound kind of, and my partner at the time, she described it very similarly as well. It was audible. So it was kind of like this kind of sound, not dissimilar to what we get through the Trifield meters sometimes. But the interesting thing, it was perfectly timed with my heart. So absolutely perfectly timed. So I had this awareness of lying in bed with this kind of heartbeat sound, this pulse coming through here, and then this external, very localized in the corner of my room sound that was perfectly in time with it. And I transitioned through that with that awareness into a full state of awakeness. And I sat up and I went, what? And I felt my heart and I heard this sound outside in the corner of the room, you know, and you know, inside my room, but outside of me, perfectly in time. And I went, what is going on? And I felt this the sense of excitement and joy. And so my heart rate changed and then the sound changed. And then I woke up my partner then. I said, hey, Lisi, you know, wake up. Can you verify that you can hear this? And so she heard it as well. And we sat there listening to this really unusual sound in the corner of the room. Like this, very endearing. It had a very endearing quality. And it's a very odd experience to talk about because it was so strange. And then what I noticed is it went through the window on the upstairs, and I'm speaking from home at the moment. Upstairs here, there's two windows which open up onto a small deck that overlook the hills. So we tracked it going out. By this time, it was both of us. We tracked it going out the window. So it had become quieter. It was still audible. So I opened up the window and went out, and I could hear it. Floating off into the trees. And I was observing it. It was very localized, a very defined sound source from one specific region. Tracked it going through the treetops. So these trees are called tikoka, and they're like a type of palm, and they're quite dense. And it was going right through them. So I went, okay, I went outside. Very cold, went outside and down along the deck outside my place and down towards where the toilet is. And literally heard it go through the air and then down probably about 10, 15 meters in front of me. And then it just turned into this red wraith of light and disappeared. So that was something that, you know, there's these high strangeness events that happen in a very personalized way. And, you know, we stumble into the unknown when we do CE5, you know, but we do so with an innate sense of trust because of what we know through our shared experience, right? So that happened, and this was just prior to the Mount Potts expedition, which, forgive me if I get the dates wrong, the C5 events are all kind of blending into one right now, but I think it was March 2016, if I'm correct. So we then proceeded to go to the Mount Potts expedition, and those that were there, I know Joe was there, and if Greg is here, he was there. We'd just kind of gone through some of the protocol early in the evening. We'd done, one of the ladies did a karanga, which is a way that Maori female welcome energy and welcome people to formal events. And I'd done a karakia, which is a type of blessing and acknowledgement of the land. And played, interestingly, a purerehua, which is a spun instrument. It's a wind instrument. They're called bull roarers by most cultures. And we use them here as an acknowledgement of spirit, of acknowledgement of ancestry, and a peaceful acknowledgement of their presence and the lineage that we all have. So we'd just done that when the valley lit up, and it looked like floodlights on the ground. And we were in a very, very remote part of the South Island of New Zealand. Mount Potts, it's if you have a look on Google Earth, you can see it. We're in a big glacial valley there. So these lights lit up and they panned across this like giant floodlights, and we watched them condense into this very large ETV that was off in the distance. We estimate that it was about 1.5 to 2 kilometers away. So that happened on the first night. And the second night, and this is how it ties into the experience that I was just describing, it was about, it was the first break, I think, in the evening. I had my Trifield meter, and I said to Doug Parker, look, yeah, I might just go for a wander over here, do a baseline check during the end of the break, because I felt something was there. And I thought it was my intuition, you know, and of course it is in a way, but there's something else to it that I'm getting to. So I took my Trifield meter and walked around and did the baseline reading. But then I just kept on getting compelled to go further. And I know a lot of people here have experienced this. So I carried on and I carried on and I carried on. And I was away from the group, admittedly, for probably a bit too long. But I was having an experience, and I couldn't walk away from it, you know. So I felt this energy there, and I felt it very much interacting with my bioelectromagnetic field. So it was like another node of preparation, I guess you'd call it. So I acknowledged its presence. I said, hey, look, I'm on my own. I'm not specifically following CE5 protocol here. I should not be doing this without someone here. So can you come back to the team? That's what I said in consciousness. And what I got was the team needs to become more coherent. The Merkaba meditation would be good. So I said, okay. Went back to the team. I shared that with Ricky and Doug, and Ricky said, yeah, we're just about to do the Merkaba meditation. So we did that. The next session, the next break, myself, Doug, and another person that was there went off over to the same area. And we were standing there feeling this strong, intense field that you do when you're in close proximity, right? And another lady in our team came wandering over, and we could hear her. You know, she chose to come over by her own means, and was compelled also to come and join us. And we were on a landing strip. It's basically a light aircraft landing strip that was pebbles and very dry grass, South Island, New Zealand. Short dry grass. They could hear her walking, crunch, 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 crunch. So she got there, and then the four of us stood there, and we were feeling all of this energy, you know, this kind of localized, as Dr. Greer calls it, piloerection, or hairs standing on the end, but it was moving in bands up and down. So we'd feel it here and down, almost like if you imagine someone scanning you, like on a sci-fi movie. It kind of felt like that. And we were all experiencing these kinds of very kinesthetic sensations, very, very much energetic, very much electromagnetic, very much interacting with our energy field, aside from seeing anything. And then I said, can you give us an undeniable experience? And this form appears in the field, and it appears kind of at about 2 o'clock from my vantage point, 2 o'clock. And this particular being was about 15 meters away, we estimate. And it was a silhouette, and it was about 5 feet tall. And so we were like, oh, and it was actually the lady to my right who saw it first. And she said, who's that? And this happened, immediately, pretty much within a couple of seconds after me saying, can you give us an undeniable experience? It shows up. Now, the interesting thing was, we all assumed initially that it was a person. And this is a really important point. This comes up a lot in close proximity experiences, that they often appear just like someone in our team. And sometimes we walk right up to them thinking, hey, is that you, Marcel? Or hey, is that you? And it's an awareness of, hang on a second. My process now has become, I'm going to treat every silhouette that I see in the field as being potentially an ET, rather than someone in the team, in the sense of a human. So in this case, what happened was, I said, is that someone from our team? Is that someone from our team? Nothing. Can you say hello if you are a human? Odd thing to say, but it worked. And so this particular being, we understood what was going on at that point, and then we took a step forward, and that's when it glided, and it just glided very, very slowly, very gently, and it probably glided for the course of about 15-20 meters, and then just went like that. So that was my first 3D, I guess, close proximity experience. And the bits of information that I'm starting to understand about these experiences now is the kind of the conditions prior to having that experience. So what I understand to be very important in this case was the experience that I started this whole dialogue with, was this little tap. There was some attuning that was going on with this sound and this pulse, this frequency, which was perfectly in tune with my heart. That was the initial preparation, I believe, for that close proximity experience that led me out into the field. There was something that was going on within my bioelectromagnetic field, the torus field of my body, that they were interacting with, that was like a marker, I guess, or a vibratory preparation that would then start resonating with their energy in the field, that kind of compelled me to go out and be there. So that kind of spawned this whole interest for me in bioelectromagnetic communication. So what is going on when we're communicating through our energy field? How does it work? So this kind of gives rise to the frequency of our emotional state and how we expand that. And then as the Torus energy comes back up, what is being communicated through their presence and their interaction with our energy field as the toroidal energy comes back up and we extend it out again, and what happens in that continual cycle as being a fundamental form of biology and of the cosmos itself. So yeah, that's opened up this whole realm of how would you describe it? Communication, essentially, and as humans, we are 3D right now, and we are not obviously this body that we're in. We all know that. Yet we have to deal with a lot of our encounters from this 3D reality. So when we're shifting beyond that kind of you know, when we accept and really embrace the fact that we are consciousness within this physical form, and we treat every encounter like that, then we can really kind of start to move beyond this kind of fixation of me talking to you now and me touching, you know, and actually get into the non-physical aspects of communication, which, you know, we'll get to more with OBE and so forth. But I just wanted to share that because I feel that there's really a lot at play here with the Torus, this kind of sense of the electromagnetic field that we are transmitting and that they are interacting with, and how that becomes this merging and this guidance and this in some cases download of information when we get into a full state of coherence with these beings. So yeah, I'll leave that that little segment there for now, Una.
Wow, thank you, Jeremy. Yes, I know from your sound background, your musical background, you're also very talented in communicating, making sounds with your mouth. And I just remember being in the field with you, and we would hear these sounds coming out of the forest, and you would communicate with them. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, I've done a lot of travel in the last. I left New Zealand when I was 19. I'm 44 now. I've been self-employed since I was 19 in the arts sector. So it's a constantly evolving transformation, and it's constantly evolving because you know, to survive as someone in the music and arts industry takes a lot of creativity and how you make it work. So as a New Zealander, that's meant leaving because we're a small population and traveling to other economies and where there's more people, which initially was Australia and then Japan and then Europe, more recently the USA. So that spanned many years, and over that course, that journey, I've come into, you know, contact with a lot of different people, a lot of different languages, whether it's Japanese, whether it's West African languages, whether it's German, or so I really like listening, and I really like what I've noticed. I spend 2 weeks with my Italian friends in Bologna, and I start to speak like this, you know, you know what I mean? I take on the kind of the tonality of the environment. And I guess that's a part that's been a natural kind of a natural thing for me to do in the field. I know when Jeff Sell and I were on my first training in the Yucca Valley, you know, I heard clicking on my first night. And initially I was having a bio break, as we say, and there was this clicking kind of sound that went around me, like this around, and I went, So I went back to the circle. I said, hey, is there some kind of night bugs around here that click? You know, I'm from New Zealand. It's the first time in the Yucca Valley for me. And Dr. Greer said, oh, there are some species of ETs that click, you know. So okay. And then I went off on another break, and then I heard these little footsteps and kind of clicking again. So Jeff Sell and I, we shared a lot of experiences that training, and one high strangeness one was when I was talking to him. We were standing in front of a little bush in the Yucca Valley, and there were these kind of lights, like little red and white pinpoint lights. And we could feel this energy. And one of the nights we could actually smell what smelled like roses, you know, in the Yucca Valley. I mean, anyhow, what happened was my throat started clicking while I was talking. So there was some kind of communication that was coming through while I was speaking, which was very strange. We've heard these clicking beings many times, audibly inside the room. I've got many recordings of them now. One of the latest ones was at a neighbor's house here at Piha, where I live. And the clicking came in as it does with, you know, as ET do communicate with our technology as well, but it came in right at critical points of the meditation as an emphasis, you know. So it's very much that kind of sound. So that's one particular species we've had a lot of interaction with, and we believe them. We understand that they kind of share this space with us in the sense of being transdimensional, and they are associated with the forest, they're associated with mist, they're associated with scintillating light fields. One high strangeness experience I had on the beach here, which involved clicking as well, and a sequence of 13 that was coming through my radar detector. Doug Parker was there. There was a condensed field of what looked like cirrus cloud. So it was very small, and it was at the forest edge, and there was this feeling of joy and playfulness, and it went into the forest. And I said, well, can you come down and, you know, come down to where Doug is and kind of come down and meet him. And, you know, so it popped into the forest and it popped back out again, this visible little misty form. And I was just really amazed at watching this transpire. And I said, like, in consciousness, can I put my hand inside your form or this field of energy that I'm seeing? So I did. And as I was walking down the hill, it kind of maintained proximity with me, this kind of floating, unusual, probably about 3 feet tall cirrus kind of cloud, this little pillar along like this down the beach and towards Doug. And in the recording, we have the field recording, you can hear all the technology going off, and Doug says, they're coming with you. And I said, I just invited them to come down. The interesting thing about that experience is the next morning I had this impression that was left on my hand, which really threw me out sideways. I had not, I really, logically, it kind of tested me, you know. I'd assumed that I'd been carrying something that left this physical mark in my hand, like a chair, or there was some, but then I really looked at it and I went, wow. And I really considered, hang on a second, this has been, that would have had to have been on my hand for about 8 hours while I was sleeping. So I got up and photographed it. I've got these photographs of this impression that was left in my hand. So that was in relation to clicking and that kind of context as well. I know I'm diverging a little bit, but it fills out the story to kind of, you know, how these experiences all get intertwined and they lead on to other aspects and into other compartments. And it's very difficult to isolate a particular CE5 experience because they are so entwined. And I think it's a really important thing not to separate them in that sense and say, well, this is this, and this, and this, and this, this, and to follow a typical human way of thinking, which is we call them cognitive cupboards, you know, to put everything in a little cognitive cupboard and say, I'm filing it away here. That's these beings, I've labeled them. I know what they do. There's that file over there. I know where it is. I feel safe now because I understand it. So I'm just going to file it away there, whereas that's not at all true in most cases. So we need to kind of keep all the files out on the table and kind of sift through them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So yeah, in relation to another experience, Una, with audio, and there's some people here again, Marcel and Justice were at this expedition in New Zealand in Taupo, and at one of our contact site there was fantastic. We had a giant Merkaba in the field. And just to backtrack a little bit with this particular event, we decided on the location in New Zealand because you know, we wanted to get a place that was easy for most people in New Zealand to travel to, from Wellington, from Auckland. So this was the central North Island, Taupo, and Taupo's a very large volcanic crater. If you look on the Pacific Ring of Fire, it goes right through it. So it's a giant lake that was a volcano. So very, very potent and powerful energetic site. And yeah, I was really struggling to find a venue. So I just kind of said, guys, come on, you know, can you give me an obvious sign? Can you just guide me to it? So I meditated on that for 10, 15 minutes. And then I went for a walk and just changed my space and came back to my computer and got on Google Earth. And I was looking around the edge of Lake Taupo. And if you get on Google Earth and you look at a little place called Omori, Omori, you will see what I saw. And there's a Merkaba, and it's visible on Google Earth. So I went, oh, that's a pretty obvious sign. So I zoomed in, and then I saw on Google Maps, such and such retreat center. And I went, oh, okay. So I wrote to the owner of the place. I found the website, wrote to the owner of the place, and it happened to be at 9/11, and she actually replied at 11/11. So it was like, okay, well, we're doing this. So we did that event, and what I heard on one of the nights at this event, and this was over towards the edge of the forest again, and again, there's similar indicators with their light phenomenon, rustling kinds of sounds, bipedal kinds of sounds. But this night was very interesting, and it relates to an experience we shared, Una, because the sound that came through is like this. And I heard that and I went, huh, is that you guys saying hello? And then I heard it again, exactly the same thing. Like this. Okay, well, could you do it one more time just to prove that, this is you saying hello? So same again. And then crunch, crunch, crunch. And I went, oh, okay. So that happened. That was my first experience with that. And in New Zealand, we have a type of possum which comes from Australia. They make a similar sound. So I was really considering that at the same time, but it's very different. It's more like kind of sound. It's a lot more visceral, I guess you'd call it. This was a lot lighter. The term, I think, in linguistics is egressive, like it's with air. Like ingressive is when we go, when we're breathing in, and egressive is when we're exhaling, and that kind of sound. So I shared that with, actually Ricky was at that event, and he said that they heard it in France when Dr. Greer was over with the French military. They heard this kind of sound. So that happened. And then in 2019, we were down in the South Island, and this experience involved Corinne and Ginny and myself, and we were with a guy on our team from the South Island, Ben, who was out. This was his first experience. He was off exploring on his own, and we were saying, well, hey, how about you stand over here and we'll stand back and look at the light phenomena around you, and so we can see it from another perspective. And very courageously he did, and he went off and did that. And when we were walking back, we heard the same sound. Interestingly, when we returned to the circle, another lady from Wellington, who's in our team, she was in another place, and she heard first, and then she heard, and she came back saying, oh, I've got to share you. So there were the same species, or the same type of communication, we can say. We're at two different points interacting with two different groups of people at the same event. So that was powerful confirmation. Now we go there again this year to the same site. And Una, we were there together. So, again, this was on a break. I walked over to the forest edge, and just to connect the dots again back to how this kind of started, there was that draw, that was that tap here. I call it it's like a compelling, but it's from here, that kind of come this way, the energy of attraction, magnetic attraction. It's like, I've just got to go over there. So that's what I was responding to, and I was standing there, and in this case, I felt a presence, and I voiced it. And it was funny because I thought I'll just give it a go. I felt there was a presence at the edge of the forest, and I was very much thinking about those prior experiences. And so I said, out loud, because I understood that to be their verbal indicator of hello, or verbal indicator that they are in this three-dimensional reality to some degree. And so what we heard following that was the same sound, and several times. But then interestingly, we heard boof, 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 crack, boof, like this in the forest. And it was very, very, very demonstrative, bipedal, very big. And very, very obvious. And this was heard by myself and Una, and by two other, at least two other people in our team that heard exactly the same thing. So that was very demonstrative in itself. And then, as you know full well, Una, we stood there and we felt and heard the footsteps walk right up to us. And in this case, this was a very big, heavy, very big gate. You know, I estimate by the sound and the feeling from that experience that the footsteps were about maybe 2 meters apart. You know, so very tall, very heavy, and that we felt the ground as this being was moving right up to us and stopped right beside myself and Una, and we went, "Wow, okay." So that kind of, I guess that happened, but the interesting thing was, for me personally, what I felt in that experience was that they were basically announcing that they were there, and my understanding is that they had some kind of protective function in relation to the smaller, more innocent, playful type energies that were very close to the team, and they were just saying, "Look, we are here as well, and there is a relationship, like almost like a symbiotic relationship that between these two types of." We'll probably call them ETs, but we actually understand them to be here transdimensional with us. And there's various kinds of opinions and thoughts around what that type of species was that we were interacting with then. So yeah, I'll leave that there. I know I'm kind of
Yeah, thank
divulging a
you.
lot. So yeah.
No, I think it's really, really helpful how you share, how you feel the field, and how you feel actually your
Mm,
physical heart, because many people don't feel their physical heart, and feeling that feel of the Taurus going through the heart, and that
mm,
creating the pull. So thank you very much
mm,
for that. And yeah, you told me another story from Africa that also sort of goes into that, how you feel other people, things, animals, and how important it is to learn to do that when you're in Africa. Would you like to share that experience?
which one was this? Which particular
Well, it's
experience?
just knowing, the crocodile, knowing the difference and the importance
Oh,
of
this is,
what they
yeah. So this is in Australia. Yeah, yeah. So yeah. So part of my, um, I've lived in a place called Yirrkala, which is a small Aboriginal community in a part of Australia called Arnhem Land, which of course is named after the place in Holland. And it's in the northern part of the Northern Territory of Australia. And this is an Aboriginal community of full-blood Aboriginal people, a lot of whom don't speak English, and they're pre-colonial. So a lot of them grew up living a subsistence lifestyle. So it's a very culturally powerful and intact part of Australia. A lot of people there call it Australia, you know. So there people have, there's remote outstation communities that are very small. They're entirely Aboriginal people, and you get invited to go and stay there sometimes, depending on your relationship with the people and so forth. So I've had a 20-year working relationship with that community now, and I lived for 4.5 years in the particular community. So we would go out hunting for fish and for stingray and mud crabs. And yeah, and this is a valid point in the I guess in the sense of how we become attuned to our environment and to energy fields in the environment. So in this case, it's learning out of absolute necessity, because and survival, very different contexts, but the kind of process, I believe, is the same. So uh, one experience, and this actually is for me one of the most profound spiritual experiences I've had to this date. I was with two other men. We were at a place called Gulronga, and Gulronga is a a mangrove system that's been hunted by the Munangeret, the Bradanga, and the Yunupingo family, which are Gumatch. They are fire and crocodile people. So their totems are fire and crocodile. And you know that when people talk about their totemic relationships in Aboriginal Australia, that, you know, if you go to their environment, there's going to be a lot of their totem there. So you start there and you're in the mangroves, so you know there's a lot of crocodiles around. So we went out to Gororunga from Bawaka in a little boat, little outboard boat with our flimsy little spears to go and get some food for the local community. And as we arrived, this was late afternoon and the tide was coming in. So as we arrived, the tide was probably about 2 feet, so just below my knees. And the old man, and this is a term of endearment in Arnhem Land, when you call an Aboriginal person old man, it's a term of endearment. You can say it to a young person, it means I respect you, you know. So the old man I was with, he said, and I said, and he kind of smirked at me. And what he said was, do you see that piece of driftwood over there? And I said, yeah, is it really driftwood? And he just kind of smirked. So he was saying, you know, be careful. So we went off, and as you do, you kind of split off and you start hunting. And I went off, and I realized at one point I was probably about 500, 600 meters away from the boat, and the other men were way off in the distance, and we were walking, and the tide was coming in. And I just kind of looked around and I went, yeah, I'm really here. You know, I'm really deep in the mangrove system now. The tide was coming in, and I looked around, and I'd crossed this little estuary, this little freshwater stream that runs into the kind of mangrove system and out into the ocean in this bay. And I was up on a higher point, and to go back, I had to cross this. So I kind of went, oh, here we go. I had probably 6 stingray, and there's blood in the water. And people, I tell people the story, they say, you're crazy for doing that. You know, you're in a crocodile infested waters and you've got stingray and blood, and, you know, so people have been doing it for thousands of years. So interestingly, what happened was, as I was crossing the stream, I felt the presence of a crocodile, and I could not see it, but I could feel it. And I stood for a second, and the sun, there was only one cloud in the whole sky. It was ridiculous. Beautiful blue Australian sky. There's one cloud. Right at the moment when I felt this crocodile in the stream that I had to go through, and I had to get up to about here, about chest height, to cross the stream, right? With the stingray and so forth, and I felt its presence. As I felt that moment, the moment when that happened, this kind of cloud moved across the sun and it went dark. And I went, oh, I'm standing there going, I've got to do this. So what I said in my in the consciousness field is, I said, I acknowledge that you're here, and I acknowledge that I'm here, and I'm going this way. I respect you. I'm with this people. I'm doing this through this lineage of these crocodile people. And we're going back. I'm taking this food back to them. And I'm requesting permission to go this way, in that state of respect and resonance with you, that lineage that I'm working through, and me acknowledging that. So I did. And I held that space. And I was so scared, but I held that field. I pushed it out, you know. So looking at the Torus again, I pushed it out and I went, I'm going this way. And I walked through, and I thought, I was prodding my spear in front of me, this flimsy little spear with 3 prongs on the end, you know, this with a bit of wire wrapped around it. You know, it works for mud crab and stingray, but a 6-meter crocodile? So I was prodding it through the water, and I was thinking, any moment now I'm just going to get eaten. But I didn't. And I came through the other side, and then everybody had converged, and this old man, he looks at me and he goes like this, and he just knew what I'd been through, you know. And then he went, and he just looked at me and he went, Merengue. And that just means understand, Merengue. And Merengue, interestingly, and what we say in New Zealand is as matakite, Merengich is like someone who sees. So Merengue and Merengich are very close together. And we drove back and there was just this beautiful silence of kind of, wow, I'm alive, I'm here, that happened. Went back to the community and the woman just sang our praises when we got back with all of this food. So incredibly bonding experience. And I guess how it's relevant, like you say, Una, in the understanding of what we're capable of in our energy field and how we can really expand that and hold it, in this case, as a kind of, this is me and I'm in this toroidal bubble and this is my frequency and I'm doing this. In this case, it was very assertive and very much, I'm safe in this bubble. I'm choosing to do this, right? And I'm going here intentionally. You cannot penetrate in through here, right? Energetically. The flip side of that is we expand that out and we open it up and we resonate with that we wish to. So that both parameters are at play there with the Torus, I believe.
Yeah. And there's that, you said you were scared. Of course, one is scared, but at the same time, there's that strength, there's that faith that all is well.
Yeah, fear is the greatest motivator. Face everything and rise, or,
Yeah.
what is it? Freak out and run or something like that. So yeah, it provides us the opportunity to do either one.
Yeah.
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 Mm.
Yeah. And it shows also how important it is to in certain parts of the world to really feel what's going on in the field just to be able to
Yeah.
stay alive.
Yeah, well, like we were talking last night, we did C5 with a big group of people last night. And, we were talking about how kind of blessed we are in New Zealand because we don't have bears. We don't have snakes. We don't have these kinds of other things that might make big sounds in the forest that you have to be aware of. I mean, we have to know our environment as CE5 ambassadors and really know it. And that includes the insect world and all sorts of things that can make anomalous sounds that we might mistake for being a type of communication or something like that. And especially in the case of clicking, there's so many things that click, but when you hear it in the corner of your room, everybody hears it. There's absolutely no source. There's no, you know what I mean? So you start to kind of go, well, yeah, that's obvious, but yeah.
So that's all the sort of natural connection, communication. But I know you're also extremely good with technology and communicating with through technology. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I have an ongoing relationship with, as a lot of us here do, probably everyone here does, with a specific type of consciousness. I struggle to call this consciousness extraterrestrial because I kind of understand them to be a spectrum of conscious light, and I experience their energy as being very transformative and very direct and very, in some cases, assertive. And it's sometimes like a directive, like, get this done. This energy comes in. You're planning this event, get it done. This is how it's happening. So I want to read a couple of passages from a document called Explorations in Consciousness, and some of you know of these experiences. So the first one, and the just to frame this before I start, there's multiple perspectives on this experience that span many years now. I think my first experience with this being happened when I was about 4 years old. So in a recent talk I did with some people in Canada, I recalled an experience from when I was about 4 with this feline face that tapped me on the shoulder, and I rolled over and I saw it, and it was kind of coming out of the side of my chest of drawers, and it scared me as a 4-year-old. I was like, ah. And around that time, I was having a lot of different experiences, and one involved this golden humanoid form that appeared at the end of my bed, and it looked like it was coming out of the ocean. And I just remember sitting up and looking at it. that might have been an OBE. I don't know. I was 4 years old. This was 40 years ago now. So the memory is a little bit cloudy in the sense of what was really going on. But the image is very, very clear in my mind still. So that happened when I was considering doing my first training with Dr. Greer. This was in April 2014. This golden form appeared in a house bus at around about between 3 and 4 a.m. when I was kind of processing a fever. I'd been unwell, and I sat up out of my body. I looked down the end of this house bus. There's this, space had changed. The whole kind of ceiling of the house bus was taller. This golden light being was standing there, very tall, very elegant, like very regal, And through this kind of field of molten glass waterfall, it passed this blue sphere through. And I took it. It was encased in this cube, and I took it and I put it in my chest, and I woke up back in my body as this energy field kind of dissipated out. That happened in April 2014. That was in Byron Bay. There's a whole background story to that, but I don't think I've got time to go into it, which included a phone call where, and I have a recorded example of this, where I was talking on the phone and it just changed. It's like someone just changed channel and it just turned into this. And I have a recording of this. This was happening a lot at that time. I understand it to be some kind of energetic communication. So that happened, that OBE happened. This being then presented at the training that I did with Joshua Tree. Jeff Zell was sitting beside me, holding my hand as I went through the vibrational state. Unbeknown to me, I didn't know I was leaving my body in the CE5 circle, but I was. And, at the end of it, Jeff kindly said, you okay? Like he thought I was cold, I think, because it was very cold, but I didn't know what was going on. I just saw this being kind of come up in terms of light up from the ground into my body. And then again, the heart centered on the heart, and then wanting to expand that field out as big as it could be. That was the energy of that kind of merging experience. The impression I was left with that was that it was all parameters everywhere, all parameters everywhere, but it was not possible from a physical standpoint. It's not possible to experience that in a three-dimensional density. So of course not, but off we went together. So that happened in the field, one of the first nights in April 2015. And I want to share the aspect of this that is probably most of you haven't heard. These beings were present again. Those of you that were at this training, at one point I saw them all standing behind people. And the language I use in the recording that Paul Reedham made was they want to sit inside you. I was kind of stumbling through this new language of contact work, so that I saw them all there. One consciousness manifest in individual forms, so that the individual frequency compatible with the individual person of the team, but they are of one consciousness. So an important point. And that was the interesting thing that happened when I was sharing that for me at that time was that Dr. Greer's radar detector was confirming what I was saying, and he was saying that they're confirming what you're saying. I didn't really understand that at the time, but that's what was going on. So they appeared then as well. And then an OBE that I had in Australia, I'm just finding it in this document now. So I'm just this happened on the 19th of May 2015. So just to kind of summarize, to keep things moving, I was kind of in that space of what people call sleep paralysis, so I call it the gap. And I've experienced this a lot through my life. It used to scare me. I didn't understand it, especially when I was a teenager experiencing it. But in studying with William Bjorman last year, I said to him, that space in between awake and asleep, it's perfect launch pad for OBE. He said, that's exactly right. So through my own process, I figured that out. And he says, yes, it's perfect. So I was in that space. But interestingly, this time, I couldn't do anything. I was really suspended there, but I was okay. I said, look, okay, all right. The interesting thing was I could see my astral arm moving out of my physical body. So I'm lying in bed. If people here have experienced sleep paralysis, you know what I mean. There's this tonality difference, but it's like the William Billman describes it as the parallel energy substructure of the physical density. So it's just slightly out of phase. You know, it's a vibratory field that creates the thought or the intent of being of physical density just prior to that. So I'm there and I'm kind of moving my arm, my astral arm out of my physical arm, and I can visibly see this. In the corner is this same golden light being that I've come to know. And in this case, he comes over, he extends his arm over and basically makes this kind of formation like this. And the interesting thing was when I moved my astral arm out of my body, his, as he feels like a male to me in that sense of experience, it would stay in perfect unison with mine, so perfectly parallel. And what was running between it was a double helix. And in the middle of that double helix was this golden white thread of light. And it remains one of the most beautiful OBEs I've ever had, because it was so intimate and so cellular, you know. So what I heard at this point was every language I've ever spoken, every reference of language I've ever had, whether it's, you know, saying, you know, hajime mashite, Jeremy desu, genki desu ka, this kind of stuff, or where are you going now, or, you know, whatever language it happens to be, that was all flowing out, and this other sound was coming in, this kind of very similar to what I'd heard in these phone kinds of transmissions. I have recordings of these, like I say, and that happened, and it lasted for what felt like, I don't know, quite a while, and then I woke up, or I thought I woke up. So I sat up then, and again, my partner Lacey then at the time, I was like, hey, I've got to tell you about this experience. So I went to tell her about it, and I realized I'd sat up and I was out of body. And I looked around and I went, oh, okay. So at this point, I said, can you, you know, give me, this was like a download experience. Can you just give me your name and how to stay in touch? That's what I said. So I got that. And I repeated that and repeated that. And then I was back in my body. And then I woke up into the physical plane. And, you know, had shared that experience with Lacey. And yeah, that ties into, I think, a whole lot of post all of that, kind of this sense of communication that is really, what's the word? Trying to find the language for this. It's like, you know what you don't know? When there's this sense of, I have no idea what's going on, but there is a resonance with it. And there is this kind of an understanding that I'm at the edge of my own understanding. You know what I mean? It's like that filament of, I like the old model of kind of spirit. You have this circle and then you have a point in the middle. And this is everything that we call our reality. And this is the limitation of our belief. So this is beyond belief, you know. And it's kind of like through that experience, it's like there's this felt sense of wanting to go into that realm continually and wanting to stay into that realm. So that really prompted me to kind of dive deeper into the OBE practice from that point on. It was really incredibly transformative. I have a couple of Trifield meter interactions with this being that I wouldn't mind sharing if I can share the screen at some point. And also, well, another experience, just to quickly put it in context again, we were in the field in Joshua Tree, and I had become used to, I guess, or acclimatized to this being using a particular cadence through my Trifield meter. And from my human communication perspective, I was saying, well, you know, I feel your presence here. I feel this kind of the same magnetic field around. And Jeff and Marcel were at this experience, Kimberly Marie, and a couple of others were with us as well. And I was kind of like, oh, well, you know, can you confirm your presence through by this means, you know? And I just got this wait, just wait. And then what happened was phenomenal, because I was just told to look up, and this great big ball of golden light, the same light that I've seen in this form when out of body, and this is in the physical reality, looked up towards the zenith, and it just went from the zenith all the way down to the horizon. So that's happened 3 times now in relation to these beings. So it's the same consciousness that is communicating in outer body experiences that initially communicated in outer body experiences, verifying its presence in the physical realm. So of course that means that it moves through, you know what I mean? But as a human, from our human perspective, it's very important not to stick ourselves or get stuck in a particular cognitive cupboard or a particular communication context and say this is how they communicate, because we'll miss a whole lot of other things. And that's what this particular being is constantly getting through to me, is like, look, we can do anything, basically. Of course we know this, but we know the idea of that, but through experience, okay, wow, that happened. Wow, that happened. And this is all the same type of consciousness coming through. So it's really wonderful. I'm going to pull up a Trifield meter interaction that happened around the same time. I need to pull out my my headset to make this work.
Yes.
And this one a lot of you haven't seen. Some of you have, but a lot of you haven't. And this is pretty wild. This one kind of really raised some questions about who we're interacting with sometimes. And again, it kind of goes on the back of what I'm hello, my Trifield meter just did a little spike then. All right, here we go. So just to frame this, Dr. Greer is talking with Carol Rosen, and he's talking to her after his shoulder injury. And I felt a lot of compassion for the man, as I often do. And I just felt this gratitude for what he was doing, and the degree of that he works for our planet and for us, and you know, everything that disclosure involves. So I connected through that compassion and that kind of gratitude. And my Trifield meter started spiking. And so I made this recording. It's very brief, but I yeah, there's my Trifield meter again. So yeah, okay. Here we go. So you should be able to see it now.
Start doing a fake disclosure that portrayed the aliens as a threat that would then create the foundation for war in space.
Okay, let's start from the top.
Which in 1955,
is there an extraterrestrial being
speech, he
communicating through this Trifield meter now?
That we need to unite the nations of the world. Ronald Reagan said we can unite the world around an alien
Is
threat.
there a celestial
This has
being
been worked on for 70
interacting
years.
with this Trifield
They
meter
have
right
had
now?
a 60 to 70 year plan, long-term plan, to play the big alien threat card, and we're seeing
Is
it
there
before our very eyes.
what we call a spiritual
You and I
being
talked about this for 2 decades.
interacting with this
But
Trifield?
this
Okay.
literally, we're watching this play out
Oh.
before our very eyes. So here's this
Okay.
email that I get the next day. He says, "I'm glad to
Thank
hear
you.
all the time, Steve. I have
Okay,
watched
so
that rat pack.
feeling your energy now in my body, I'd like to support Dr. Greer in
I have
this
watched that rat
disclosure
pack
effort.
run scam against the US
And I would like to
government,
ask directly
multi-billion
for some information
and now
to
the
support
average
the
citizen
transformation of our
keep
planet.
up the good work. I've studied this subject for over 35 years. This is one of the most senior people in the CIA on the committee dealing with UFOs and ETs. Literally,
Should we be
this man
specifically focused on deepening our connection with
was
extraterrestrial beings?
the man who, after I briefed the director of the CIA for Bill Clinton, was asked to go into
Thank
the
you.
Oval Office to clean up the mess when it was found that this
Should we
was
also
real,
be
and that the
focused
president and
on
the CIA director at that time was being lied to,
working within transforming the energy systems on our planet? Thank you.
Thank heavens for people like this, because even experts that we know, ministers of defense in other countries that we know and are friends with, have been sucked
Yeah,
into this little
okay.
alien supposed
So I just asked
scenario
in
that's
consciousness
just not true,
if we
or
should
would
be
your gut. So thank you for
working
getting this
specifically in the
information out
context
to
of
the people
peace.
who are making contact with you.
So
I hope
three
more and more
contexts.
will, because as we're hearing, they're safe. Their names are not
Three
brought
contexts.
out, so
Reaching
that
out
people
to
can
the
be
star
protected
nations
who are coming
that are
forward,
contacting
unless
us,
they want their name to come.
working with the energy systems of our planet, and working within the context of peace. Yes. These are the most critical, yes, they're the most critical things we can do as human beings right now, right? Okay. Thank you for this confirmation.
Wow, thanks, Jeremy. That is so important, that message, that this is what we need to focus on.
That
Peace.
evening, myself and my partner then went down to the beach here, and I fed that back. We were just sitting having a glass of wine on the beach, enjoying a beautiful sky. And I said, is that true what we just experienced in the context of peace? Big golden flash. Energy systems of the planet, big golden flash. You know, reaching out to you guys, big golden flash. So, you know, again, a different parameter, but again, that confirmation. So I find that particular interaction to be very interesting because it confirmed that it was a spiritual being. And this was the time when I was having interactions with, and again, I'll play the other, a lot of you here haven't seen that interaction with the being that confirms that it is the same being that has communicated with me in out-of-body experiences. I'll just quickly play the first part of that now, if that's okay with everybody. There's a totally different interaction, a totally different cadence with the Trifield meter, and again, a different confirmation of a different type of of consciousness. Excuse me. Share screen. I'm a bit of a Zoom amateur, excuse me, so I'm just, here we go. Here we are. Okay.
So I'd just like to ask a few questions. If this is an extraterrestrial being that is interfacing with this Trifield meter, please give me 3 loud hits on the Trifield meter. If this is what we call a celestial being interfacing with the Trifield meter. Thank you. This is the golden light celestial being that I've come to know through out-of-body experiences. Can you please confirm that? Thank you. Thank you. Can you please confirm you will be working with all of us at the upcoming event?
So just to frame this a bit more, we were planning an event in Thames, and I'll play another file in a moment that relates to that. But this was a preliminary energy field that came in preparation for close proximity contact that happened at that event. A whole other story that I'll just skip through here to where the energy field picks up. And this was a month of these kinds of experiences where there were multiple experiences like this at home here, where my Trifield meter, I thought my Trifield meter was faulty. These ones that I recorded, I asked prior to them, I said in consciousness, can I record these? And I got a confirmation. And then at the end of the recording, interestingly, I said, can I share this publicly? And there was silence. Can I share this with a select group of people when the time is right? And there was a confirmation. So my Trifield meter is active now at the moment. So extending gratitude, the energy field increases. This is, notice what's going on with the cadence and the intensity of the Trifield meter here.
Be here and to interact in this way.
So this is a response to an emphasis on gratitude. Now, towards the end here, when completely opening to energy flow, this is focusing on the torus and really creating coherence through my bioelectromagnetic field. Look what's coming through here.
How this information may unfold in time.
And then when it locks on right at the end here, and you know, many of us have experienced this. It's just an emphasis, and perhaps for some of you here that haven't. So visualizing singularity, the omnipresence of toroidal consciousness throughout space and time, the point that connects us all, and sharing that with the planet. More importantly, anchoring this energy to the earth with the intent of transforming our planet. The solid lock on there, and continuing on like that. So I'll leave that there. I think the gist of that's been made clear. And I'll just go to another experience. This is one that happened in Thames. And this was at the event that energy field was setting up for. So that energy field came in prior to this event that I'm now going to play. So, and this is prior to the video you're about to watch is prior to a discourse on coherence. Okay, so let me just share the screen. There we go.
March 2018, C5 training in New Zealand in Thames. Wind it up so it's audible again. Down again. These are identical. Well, this is a 60 Hertz model Trifield meter that belongs to Augustin Andrew. This is a 50 Hertz Trifield meter that belongs to Doug Kaka.
So that's a great example of a localized energy field and how specific they are. That particular energy field came in and lasted the whole time that we talked about coherence, the whole time. And as soon as we stopped talking about coherence, it stopped immediately. It came in prior to it and was there to that degree. It was just intense. It was so strong. So really stressing the importance of coherence and unity consciousness. And I think perhaps we should get into that subject a bit now, Una, and how that relates to kind of deepening our abilities and our states of contact.
Yes, please,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sure. Okay. So yeah, I wanted to share something that just kind of came up the other day for me, and this is a saying from one aspect of my ancestry here. We say, and this is through my father's lineage, through a Waitaha lineage, we say, he manawa tahi, he manawa ora, he manawa toa, he manawa kaitahu. And that means a united heart, a vibrant heart, a determined heart. This is the heart of our people, you know, united, vibrant, and determined. And it just really, it just popped up the other day, and I just went, yeah, this is really kind of what I'm feeling in the context of CE5 right now. United, vibrant, and determined, especially right now, especially the determination aspect. You know, we're at this point, many of us right now are feeling we're at a very, very critical turning point of our development as a species. And what do we do? So the underlying thing that a lot of people are experiencing is this and that, this kind of polarity, right? And in that, there's this, and there's that, and there's division. So how do we move beyond that and actually accept that I completely disagree with you and I completely disagree with what you're doing? I despise it, actually. I hate what you're doing if we talk in that way. But how do I deal with that? And how do I transform it? And how do I step into this co-created timeline on our planet where we are actually working in our optimum together to create the world we wish to live in? As Gandhi said, we must be the change we wish to see in the world. So, you know, it's obvious to most people, and I would say that everyone here knows that we need to step into unity and we need to step away from division. And the difficulty in that is how do we do that? You know, it's just such a great question. My own feelings on it and my own experience is that basically, if we are prepared to be, as C5 ambassadors and in this context, if we are prepared to be absolutely transparent with each other, absolutely open, absolutely authentic, and coherent in our own energy field. What I mean by that is, you know, for me, the challenge in my life, am I living a life that is in total agreement with myself? Am I in total alignment with my purpose in being here? You know, I haven't been in many phases of my life. I thought I was, but I haven't been. But now, with what's going on the planet, I feel like I'm starting to come into my real personal truth of why I'm here, the reason why my spirit chose to bond with my body. And for me, that creates a deep state of auto-coherence, or what the Heart Math Institute calls auto-coherence, where this deep sense of being, you know, this deep sense of being is anchored in the physicality of being here. And from that point, we are being absolutely authentic with ourselves. And from that point, we can be absolutely authentic and transparent with others. There is absolutely nothing that is not known, right? Everything is out in the open. From that point, we create a very, very deep field of coherence. And with some of my friends here, I've experienced that, you know, non-locally, where we get into the space of, I think this and you think this at exactly the same time. But, and this is the interesting point, We get different facets of the same diamond. So like this little Merkaba here, I turn it this way and it looks like this. I turn it this way, it looks like this. It's kind of that beauty of perspective that we get when we are willing to work together in a full state. Like, we are all nodes in one purpose, right? We are all nodes of one mind, of one heart. Everybody that's listening to this right now, we all have our own abilities to bring to this field of consciousness that we are working within. So we become one mind and one heart through acknowledging that and our own unique gifts. And when we're in coherence within ourselves and we approach it that way with absolute transparency and absolute love and gratitude and respect for everybody, then we create this really unilateral, like I call it the plateau, that place where you're in meditation where you just feel the all that is, you know, when there is everything and there is nothing, and you're in that field and you're just sitting there going, yes, this is the place. That's accessible to us all the time, and that's the state that we need to be living in every day, you know. So it's kind of, it's working towards that, and in my understanding of it, those are the necessary parameters. You know, get really clear on what we are doing as individuals, what we are doing here, and embrace it, step right into it, you know, and let go of the stuff that does not serve that, you know. And then from that point, create that open field of communication within your CE5 team, within your CE5 community. Treat each other with compassion, with love, with kindness. Become really close. The closer we are, the closer they are, you know, that whole kind of, that's what we're doing. And I believe fundamentally, that's what, you know, that's what's really imperative for us to do in order to create an interstellar civilization. You know, we were talking about this last night a little bit, where how does a species that exists in a pure state of unity consciousness as one mind and as one heart interact with humans? How fragmented are we to them? How does this look to them in terms of frequency, in terms of compatibility? You know, and the classic example of, you know, people talk about raising our frequency. Of course, if we look at it from frequency perspective, you know, we've got to elevate ourselves, and they kind of step down, and then we resonate at that certain point. However, that's not an individual thing. Of course it isn't. We're responsible for our own story, but it's a collective initiative. It's a collective drive that we all must do together. We have to do this, you know. And as ambassadors, for me personally, when I put my hand up and I say, hey, I'm doing C5, I'm a C5 ambassador, can we make contact? I love you guys, you know, I want to transform our planet, and those things that we all feel, and that our intent to connect. What I really feel is imperative, even more so right now, is that we all stay in that space of loving connection with each other, and you know, absolute transparency and trust, and for me that really creates unity. It really, that's what unity consciousness is, you know. And if we can do that, then I believe we deserve the term ambassador, and I believe we are capable of doing the work. If we are capable of really unifying as a team of humans on the planet. That's the battery going flat. Or the auto turn off anyway. Excuse my radar detector. Interesting timing. If we're capable of really doing that, then, you know, we're capable of really stepping into the space where we will transform our planet. We will. And that's what's in our timeline right now. That's what we're all feeling. This, you know, come on, what's it going to give to shift? And going back to that previous experience, I believe that's why that energy field was so demonstrative of that particular event, and why I'm sharing it now, because it's the right time. intuitively, I feel that it's the right time to be really talking about this and really encouraging people to make those steps in yourself and with your team. Create transparency,
Yeah.
bond, go right to the core, and treat each other with love and respect. Acknowledge our differences and acknowledge our gifts, and acknowledge the fact, the point that unifies us is that we are human, we are aware, we are conscious, we are peaceful, we are loving. That's us. So stay in that space, and the rest is just noise, So that's where we resonate. Whatever methodology you follow, great. Do what works for you. No way's right or wrong. If you connect this way, connect that way. But that's what's at the core. So, yeah. We have another. There's a professor here in Aotearoa, Professor Rangi Matamua, and he shared a little proverb the other day about the stars. So Matariki is the term that we use for the Pleiades star system here, and he talks a lot about lineages to there and Te Wakahuruhuru Manu and these old stories. And this particular proverb, if you like, it says, "E kore te whānau marama, e tohi I a rātou." And what that means is the celestial bodies do not quarrel with one another. They simply are, So if we can use that as a template to aspire to and to be, then I think we will achieve this vision that we hold for our planet. I really do. Yeah.
Wow, Jeremy, that was very, very beautiful. And as usual, you sometimes say things just on the slide, which I think are so important that need to be brought out, like ignore the noise. Ignore the noise and just go into that Zen space and stay in that unity consciousness. So, yeah, I think that's because it's always important for people to know, how do I actually do that? How do I move to that space? So thank you. Now we could talk for hours, Jeremy, but I think it's time to open it up for questions and answers.
Sure.
Are you?
Sure.
Is that good for you?
Yeah. Love to.
Okay. So, yes, anybody who would like to ask a question, just unmute yourself and speak up.
Jeremy, it's Debs. Hi.
Hey, sister.
Hey there. I don't really have a question. Thank you so much for all the sharing. I thought I knew so much about you, and I learned a whole lot more today and saw some things that I hadn't heard from you before. And I hope you're okay with this, but I had my radio set up right underneath the camera here where I'm watching you. And when you were sharing your screen with the Trifield meter interactions, I went ahead and recorded to see if my radio would react to what was happening on the screen, and it did every time. So I'll send you those recordings, but I just want you to know, I mean, it's so blatant. The information that you're giving is so pure that it is undeniable that they're confirming that you're on the right track, that we're on the right track, and that this simple information that you're conveying about staying in heart coherence, about reducing your attraction to or addiction to the noise, it's so important. And getting rid of the this and the that and being one. It's just so important. So I just wanted to say thank you and let you know that you had a whole bunch of confirmation, and I'll send you those files later.
I look forward to seeing that. Thank you so much, Debs. And just to acknowledge you, Debs and I have been working with communicating through out-of-body experiences together. And the other day I intended to support Deb's presentation meditation that she facilitates with the star teachers, and some of you know this already. I intended to be there out of my body and make contact with her right hand to just let her know that I was there because I wasn't on screen. I'd remote viewed it and I saw there were going to be a lot of people, so I took the back seat and reached out in this way. And that was confirmed. Deb's shared that with me later on, that she felt a presence holding her hand. And then we had a whole lot of other similarities in terms of what we saw in consciousness. In one case, one particular ET being that had a little geometric form, probably not dissimilar to this, that it was playing with. So this is an example. The reason I'm mentioning this is an example of a really good example of what we're capable of in terms of non-local, multidimensional aspects of who we are as beings. And this, when you've reached kind of that understanding with someone as a friend, that becomes this platform that is just there the whole time to relate from. You know, when you share that kind of magic of connection, right, Debs? When you have that kind of degree of coherence with someone, that is the baseline aspect of the relationship. So there is nothing else. You know, it's absolutely beautiful and wonderful. It's pure love. It really is. Yeah,
it really is. And we've discussed this before, but I think it's an important thing to note is that when you are in that deep of coherence with your friend or with your group or whatever, something that's very imperative is you have to stop being afraid of everyone knowing everything about you. You have to be completely open to being completely open.
Exactly.
And I think that's what stops us sometimes in our CE5 groups, right? Or in our relationships. But it's certainly what is blocking us from gaining what we all really truly want. I truly believe we do as a species here on this planet. I think it's the one thing that's blocking us is everybody is afraid that someone else will find out things about them or, you know, hook into things with them that they don't want to be known. Well, you can't move up into the civilization realm that we're talking about without letting that go. And there is just nothing to fear, right? So I had no idea that you were going to take a back seat that day and not be present because you said you were going to be present at my meditation. And, you know, once I'm in there, I don't even see the screen or anything. So I'm just channeling it and leading the meditation. But I literally felt you holding my right hand. And then we had those other experiences. So he didn't front load me at all. It's just that we were in that deep of coherence that we literally were there with each other. And that is one of the most beautiful things that anyone could ever experience. So, and I have to thank you for that, by the way. So thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Debs.
Thanks.
We have Marie, Mary or Marie, I'm going to unmute you. Let's see. Wait, hold on. You need to unmute. Yeah, now.
Hi, I'm from Boonbrook, Texas, and I see Justice is on. He told me about this website, and I found this as soon as Stephen Greer had started the movie. I had it in possession, you know, and I've been following him for a long time. I'm just a CE1, and it is very personal to step into a room of 55 people, all sharing, and we're hoping for a journey. And when we started, you saw me maybe a little bit fumbling around in the kitchen. I have a caterpillar. Well, that's because of there it is. Can't see them, but I've got a caterpillar aviary going on. I am. Those are my little spiritual beings right now. But I practice Tai Chi, and I'm hoping for my first group experience here where they're going to meet next weekend. And so thank you. And on Jeremy, I enjoyed what you said about the orb, this yellow thing, because I've seen something like that before. And that gave me confirmation of something I needed in here. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you. And I wish everybody in Texas a wonderful weekend
It's
next
hot.
weekend.
It's hot.
And we have Elizabeth.
Oh, hi. I just want to say thank you so much, Jim. I really enjoyed everything about the talk. Hello, Debs. I just wanted to say, when you were playing the recording with the Trifield meter and it was going really high, I think it was about the cat being, I started to almost cry. I was trying not to cry. It just hit me and I was very surprised by it. But because, it's just an electronic signal, but it hit me. So I just wanted to share that was really quite touching. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And that raises the point. You see, a lot of people have that kind of response to these fields, these energy fields that come through, even when they're recorded. And if we look at it, metaphysically, what's captured in the recording is likely some kind of data that is in a magnetic meter. We are electromagnetic beings, so there is an energy that is in that interaction. I have had interactions where they've used all sorts of types of different devices, some of them very strange, and I've said in the recording, can you please, I'm getting the feeling that when other people listen to this recording, they will experience something similar, or they'll get other bits of information from this recording simply by listening to it. Can you please confirm that that is accurate? And they did. So yes, there's data in this, and we don't understand it, but we're experiencing it, and we're figuring out, and we're we're getting to work on it. So it's a common experience, Elizabeth. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
That. They can be very emotionally charged.
It was beautiful. Like it's like almost like joy over top of joy. So it took me over the top where I couldn't handle the happiness, if that makes sense. Like, so it was really quite special. So thank you. I wasn't expecting that.
Pleasure. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Yeah, I think the way we feel and whether we can connect in consciousness with something will tell us whether it's, I don't like to use the word dead, but whether it has a consciousness that we can interact with or not. And for example, with holograms, if there's a hologram, we most likely cannot connect in consciousness. Whereas if it's real, we can. And the same with stars or ships or whatever we see in the sky. If we can connect in consciousness, we know it's different, it's real, and we have an emotional reaction to it. Yeah. Is there anyone else who would like to comment, ask a question? Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Cool. I actually have a question for Jeremy concerning the out-of-body experience.
Great.
Yeah. Hey, I'm wondering, are you at a stage where you're able to create the conditions to project, or is it more of an opportunity that comes to you, which you take advantage of since you know the science?
It's a great question, and thank you for asking that. So just to frame it, yeah, most people, I'd say most people here have had some type of spontaneous OBE. So that's a terminology that a lot of people use, where it feels out of your control, and it feels like there might be some guidance, some other type of consciousness there holding your hand through the experience. That's definitely been the case for me through the majority of my early experiences. In studying with William Bjorman and kind of doing my own practice through, well, I studied with William Bjorman just last year in April at the Monroe Institute. But prior to that, and doing my own practice, learning how to exit with my own strategy, that's what we call self-initiated OBE. So spontaneous versus self-initiated. And in the processes that I've learned through my own practice, and indeed experiences with non-local conscious or consciousness that is non-physical, that you meet in out-of-body experiences, through dialogue with them and through shared experiences with them, I'm developing my own practice. Also with my understanding of neurolinguistics and the effect of language in terms of getting us into a deep state of expanded awareness, and also with my sound engineering skills, I'm putting together resources which is going to actually be an app specifically for use in the context of CE5. So as we know, a lot of the intelligence that we are interacting with is not physically dense in the way that we experience it anyway. So they exist in the other aspects of the spectrum of consciousness, from physical density right across to the unified field. There's all these different kinds of energy environments. And when we go out of body, we access these different environments. These days, when I practice OBE, I'm up at between 3 and 4 most mornings, and I'm up most mornings. I will be using some of the files that I'm working on at the moment as a self-reflective process to kind of get into the space of, is this working? Does it feel right? Do I need to make some adjustments here? And I'm having about a 40% exit rate. So about half of the time when I do it, I get out of body, and the other half I don't. I'll be in the vibrational state. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and I had one more. I was wondering, do you think caffeine interferes with being able to project?
Yeah, any suppressants or stimulants are disruptive to the process. Yeah, because the majority of people move through the vibrational state, and if you have you know, some type of neurotransmitter that's out of balance in your, you know, in your body, in your bloodstream at that time, it can inhibit it. It doesn't always. I've gone to bed after a few glasses of wine sometimes and had very profound out-of-body experiences, but it is recommended that you keep it clean. That if you really want to embrace this work, fast, do a long fast and get very, very light in your body, because lightening up your body really helps. Get very clear mentally, and make a practice between 2 a.m. and 4 or 5 a.m. when the melatonin is highest in your body, which really assists with exiting. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Hi, Jeremy. Linda here.
Hi, Linda.
I am chairman for C5 Copenhagen from Denmark. Yes. My question for you is, when you do C5, so besides the Trifield meter, what other equipment do you bring?
Well, our consciousness primarily, you know, so I always like to stress that these are just a verification of a connection and consciousness. So, you know, we use radios as well, and radar detectors, the noisy one you heard as it powered down, the auto shut off. So those are the three main technologies that we're using at the moment, and there's a lot of different types of interactions, and there's themes that emerge, specific types of interactions and cadences between the radios, the Trifield meters. There's one with the radar detector, there's one particular type of consciousness that uses the sequence of 13 to say to us that they're around, and it's always really significant. It always is prior to a really significant energy event. So this particular consciousness will basically trigger my radar detector, or a friend's, Doug Parker's radar detector, to do a sequence of 13 like this kind of pulse. And then when we hear that, we know we need to prepare energetically for a big download of information, a big data dump. So it's kind of this precursor to something that's going to happen. So they can be quite helpful in that sense. I see them as training wheels, though, as that, you know, they're kind of like, they're facilitating our conscious connection, and they're verifying it. So we get to say, hey, can you please confirm through my Trifield meter if what I'm getting telepathically is correct? And they will, or they won't. So in that way, we get to start to gauge the kinesthetic consciousness aspect of it and verify that. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, anyone else?
Yeah, I'd like to say something. You know, confirmation is important. Hi, Jeremy. You know, I could go on for another hour and a half about some of the things Jeremy and I have experienced, and I'm thankful to him, and I acknowledge that. many times when I have a talk with a group. But as far as confirmations, you know, the electronic stuff is great. You know, when we see the flashes in the sky as a response to something we're doing, that is such a touching feeling to actually have something outside of ourselves responding to the things we're doing. And one of the things that I'd like to mention too is, for instance, this one experience we had where Jeremy was seeing these lights that I wasn't seeing. And then he directed me where to take a picture. And even though I wasn't seeing these lights, the camera picked it up. So to me, that is just so amazing that, you know, one person could be experiencing these very vivid visual experiences, and I wouldn't see a thing, but the camera picks it up. So, you know, we've been in multiple groups, and a person in the group may say something like, hey, there's a red orb in front of so-and-so on the other side of the group. Although nobody else sees it, it's there. You know, in a lot of cases, it's there. It's and for a camera to pick it up is the confirmation. So it's just to have an open mind about everyone's experiences. It's nice to have the confirmations. So I just wanted to add that. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. I really appreciate that, because it takes courage to speak up sometimes when we experience something, and at the same time it's so important because it all adds together and the camera may pick it up. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and then also one other thing is somebody, although somebody may report that they've seen something, somebody else in the group may have seen that in their mind prior to that, the other person acknowledging it. So yeah, it's important to share. So
yes, a very, very good point. It's also that in our C5 group environments, anytime somebody says something and we can't confirm it ourselves, usually you'd be ridiculed in normal other society, but we don't, because we realize how important it is and how it all fits together. Yeah. Anyone else who would like to share or ask someone?
Yeah, I'd like to, first of all, say, Jeremy, thank you so much. That was really profound and beautiful. Not necessarily speech, but education that you gave us today. Truly appreciate it.
Thank you, brother.
I just want to touch on the fact that both you and Una and also Deb's mentioned is the fact of opening up and how important it is to have some vulnerability. Because, you know, when I was making contact and I became very vulnerable to the ETs or whatever was out there, it's when I had the most profound experiences. I mean, when you open your heart and when you open your mind, things develop, things that you weren't able to perceive, you begin to perceive them. And I guess the point that I'm trying to make is we need to turn that now into doing the same thing with the people around us, especially for a lot of newcomers that come into the group. You know, everyone is very reluctant. There's this, as you said, fear of being ridiculed. And if you set that aside and actually for the leaders to let them know that you're in an environment that no one's going to ridicule you, the whole group gets in this cohesive mindset where so much can happen, and it's so rewarding for everybody when we reach that mindset. And I guess what I want to say is, don't worry about being ridiculed. Open up, be vulnerable, and amazing things will start happening. And it might be gradual ones, but eventually, as you open up more and more, let's just say you start letting the love in, and the love starts coming out tenfold. And it's a really beautiful experience. And as far as technology, Another tool that's a little, you have to learn how to use it is a laser. A laser has, two functions. One is to help people within the group to point at some object that's occurring, because things happen really, rather quickly. And if you can take a laser and kind of point to a general area in the sky, then everybody can turn and have that experience. So that's one great thing about a laser. The second thing is it's a communication tool. And where we had many experiences where we might see some anomaly in the sky and we can signal with a laser. We can't do that with a flashlight. You can use your mind and have a response, but when you have a group environment and you use a laser to signal around an ET craft and it responds, that's a form of communication. So it's another tool that I think would be, nice to have. Not all countries allow them. They're illegal in some countries, but in the US we have them, and it's a good tool. And Jeff also made a good point, is the camera. The camera is so important to validate what happened, but also to have other people see what maybe someone in the group was able to see and someone was able to capture it, and you can share that experience, because a lot happens in a very short period of time, and not everybody is tuned in to whatever anomaly might be occurring. But when you can capture that, it's so inspirational when you share that with a group and they can see that. And I think that helps build as far as being more aware next time you're out in the field, because you were able to, see and validate something that happened, as opposed to people that are very tuned in and can have experiences, but the people that aren't quite there yet really can't comprehend, because it's coming, from, well, this is what I saw in my mind's eye, but they're not privy to that. So when you're starting off, it's really important that if someone is fortunate enough to capture that, is to share it with the group to help them build on that.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents.
Well, that's more than 2 cents. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, I didn't mean, I meant that compliment in a complimentary way.
Yeah.
I think that was very, very important to share.
Really. Yeah, and I just wanted to add something. Thank you, brother. That was so great to hear. The vulnerability aspect, I just wanted to share something that is very much aligned with what you're saying. The first training I was at with Greer, and Jeff was my buddy at that event. One of the types of consciousness that I experienced when I was out of body had a tetrahedron form. And the name that I got, was Jubu, J-U-B-U. It's how I spelt it. And I felt so silly at the idea of sharing this with the group. I just felt like, oh my God, are you serious? I've just met these people. It was on the second night or something like that. It was really early in on the event. So I was and Jeff was kind of nudging me along. He's like, come on, share that experience. I was like, okay, well, this happened. And I said, and this being said its name was Jubu. I just blurted it out, and I was kind of like waiting for something, almost anticipating kind of, and Dr. Greer says graciously, I really like the name Jubu, with a smile. And I went, oh, cool, great, some approval, that's nice. So I kind of felt like, great. The interesting thing here is, what I experienced with that being was this very specific energy, very active, very mobile, very facilitating in terms of connection and consciousness. And I've used it as a type of thread to connect to ET beings and consciousness. There's a whole lot of story connected to this. Jeff Sell was smart enough to take a photo of it when I said it was over my shoulder, and you can see it as this kind of tetrahedron form in relation to the sketch that I drew before the photo. The interesting thing about this and being vulnerable and sharing this story is that Ju and Bu are Sanskrit dhatu. And I did not know this, but I was guided when I got back to New Zealand when I was looking at why would they tell me the name Jubu? It's got to mean something, you know. So I thought, well, we were doing pujas, and Dr. Greer's, you know, does it Sanskrit. So I thought, oh, I'll look at Sanskrit. So JU and then BHU, those two Datu together basically describe exactly what I experienced this being, how I related to it, and its function, everything. I couldn't have described it better with the language that I use. So in being vulnerable and then sharing out, you know, often if I hadn't have shared that, maybe I wouldn't have remembered that name, wouldn't have thought of it as being important, and then I might not have made that connection. You know what I mean? So yeah. I just wanted to support your statement in that regard, because it is very important to just kind of share whatever we get.
And vulnerability, I like to see vulnerability actually as a strength rather than a weakness.
Yes, exactly.
And if I may add, I think it also helps unblock certain things that, you know, are preconceived notions and just things that you're dealing with on a daily basis. When you start opening up and becoming vulnerable, I think it helps out tremendously, especially in what we're doing in the contact work. Also, if I could just point out and ask Jeff if I can tell the story real quick in a few seconds of what happened in Sedona with the clicking sounds, because Jeremy experienced those and I never heard them until I was in New Zealand and was able to hear the clicking sounds, which were really absolutely amazing. But we were in Sedona in February, and it's about 30 some degrees, Jeff, and a small group of us, maybe 5 of us, were sitting around at about 11 p.m. or midnight, and Jeff says, "Hey, there's something speaking through me in my throat," and I had my tape recorder, so he said, "Bring it here." So I took the tape recorder and I put it right in his chest, and I recorded about a minute or so of this incredible communication. He's clicking coming from Jeff's throat. I don't know if you want to add to that, Jeff, but it was absolutely amazing. I do have the recording that if anybody wants to listen to it, it's absolutely just breathtaking.
Yeah,
Jeff,
yeah, that was, it was in the 20s Fahrenheit. It was cold. It was around midnight. But I felt something enter my body, and that was something that, you know, it's subtle, but there was some involuntary muscle movement. So that cinched the deal for me. It was in, and then that started happening, that clicking in my throat. It was quite, to me, it was quite loud, and I didn't want to interrupt it. I had my mouth wide open, and I was hoping others in the group would hear it. And then record it so I wouldn't have to interrupt it. But after a few minutes of that, I mentioned that, and I know Marcel had his recorder out. So that was the first time. It was that, well, it seems like every time I have an experience, I think that's true for most people, it's different. There's always, you know, it's for me, it's rarely, whether it's a visual thing or the only thing that seems that's the same is what I feel. And that's something I learned through Jeremy too, is the feeling when they're present, when the entities we call ET are present, there's a definite feeling that's, and I'm so grateful that I get this. I know when they're present, and that feeling increases. It's been increasing at every event, and it's not due to per se something that I can do to bring it in. It's usually the group. It's the group coherence. It's the group's power together that brings it in the strongest. So that's something I'm very grateful for. And I just can't say how much I love doing these kind of things with the groups and the people I know. This is probably the most rewarding thing in my life that is reproducible. And you know, it's one of the most enjoyable things in my life. So it's nice to have all you people on the same page. So.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. I could say the same thing. since doing C5 in groups, it's just, my life has changed. And I think many of you can just agree with that. Yeah, we're going to move on. So I would like to say a big thank you to you, Jeremy, truly from the bottom of my heart for being alive and for being live with us today. And thank you for sharing from your vastness, your sincerity, the expansion of consciousness, and for the love of your being. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. If it's okay with everybody, I'd like to conclude with a little karakia from this part of the world in alignment with part of my ancestry. And it's a blessing. So karakia is a type of blessing. Usually we do them at the end, but we can do them to conclude as well. And this one is really about te hau. H-A-U, it's a word that is really our vital essence, and it connects. Ho is also breath. It's the idea that when we first come into this physical realm, we go, and when we start our exit, we go. So it's te hau. It's really that in and out process of in and out being here, you know. So I'd like to share that with you to conclude, if that's okay. It's a way of extending our connection non-locally. Ngā hau e whā, we say the four winds that come together and intertwine and meet us all. Yeah, so we'll conclude with that. And also acknowledging the waters that connect us, te wai, and also the spirit, the union of truth, of peace, of gratitude. Yeah. Hau, ki runga. Hau, ki waho. Hau, ki roto i a tātou. He hau mihi. He hau pai e. Tuku ora ki te rangi e. Hei hau ora mō te ao. Hau manu. Hau miri. Hau ora. Hau kainga. Ti hei. Mauri ora. Te wairere. E waimata. Tuku ora ki te whenua. Hei waiu mō te ao. Wai puna. Wai hanga. Wai ata. Wai rua. Ti hei. Mauri ora. Ai o ki te aoraki. Aroha ki te aoraki. Koa ki te aoraki. Pono ki te aoraki. Kia tau ko te kahukura, te wairua korihere, te kawe i te tika me te pono e toko aroha tēnei. Ki te ao whānui he maumahara tēnei. Hā kui, a papatū nuku. Tihei, mauri ora, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.